Hello and welcome to the early 17Lands data review for Duskmourn. Today I'm going to be taking a look at the early data, what it says to me. This is just kind of my take on the data. People are going to have different opinions about what different things mean. But this is just kind of my view. It's nice to give an overview. Some important context here is that I have not been doing super well in this format from a win rate perspective because I keep getting baited into drafting like blue-red all the time, which you know, doing things that aren't good for me. But that's neither here nor there. So that is it is not it's not a format where I would consider myself an authority on what's best to be doing. So we're just going to take a look in a sort of a good place to usually start for me is the deck color data, and then we start with overall user. Everybody, we see that the two best decks are Boros and Azorius as of the moment, with sort of a tier 2 of Gruul and Simic. This kind of aligns with what my expectations would be, although again I've kind of been drafting like not not like this. There's kind of like a middle tier of Rakdos, Golgari. That's kind of it. And then there's sort of the bottom tier of like Selesnya, Orzhov, Dimir, and Izzet. Which is actually interesting that there's so many decks in that bottom tier. Usually there's only one or two. Now the bottom tier is elevated above where it usually is. Usually there's one deck that's around 50%. That's not true in this case. 52 is as low as it goes, which means that the format is pretty balanced, is generally what that means. If we go to top users, we often see that these win rates are more balanced, and they are in this format as well, balanced around 60% usually. So Azorius and Boros still clearly the best for top users at the moment, but Rakdos, Gruul, and Simic move up quite a bit. Golgari and Selesnya are sort of another tier below them, as well as Izzet, and then it's Orzhov and Dimir bringing up the rear. But obviously everything clearly draftable here. If we look back for a moment at BLB, oh boy, even for top users, actually by the end of the format you can see BLB is more of a balanced format even than this one currently. But that's just how that goes over the course of the format. It will balance out a little bit more. But currently Orzhov and Dimir are probably not decks you should be drafting very often. They seem to be still a little bit overdrafted at the current draft rates, which are still not huge samples, right? We see this is only 1,000 games, which isn't super indicative. The Izzet win rate is here, and it's okay. I don't know. So, it's interesting to look at these. Not super informative. Top player win rate is 59%, which is about average, generally what you'd expect. So, yeah, I mean, I think clearly if we go back here right now, what this indicates to me is we've got Azorius and Boros. Specifically, I feel that red is the best color. We see red here, red, and then Izzet's the last one. But it's actually pretty balanced. And white, has two of the best decks, but also two of the worst decks. So that's kind of interesting. Like when a color is like that. It's kind of an interesting dynamic in terms of when do you draft white cards, and it's interesting because there's only two decks you want to be in with white. I think you can play Selesnya. I mean, it says you can play Selesnya, but you really don't want to try to start there without a lot of high rarity cards. And that's it for now. There is more there's more multicolory stuff you can be doing in this format. There is fixing is good, so there's something to consider. But I think for the two color pairs, that's kind of all I want to talk about. Quickly, to look at this, I always look at this chart just to see where we're at. Here we are right next to Wilds of Eldraine and Lord of the Rings. So, yeah, I mean, just about as long of games as Bloomburrow, but more draw favored than historically things have been. It's been sort of in this cluster. I don't know, nothing really super out of the ordinary here, very sort of average set. I don't think this is all that out of the ordinary for Modern Limited. I think this is totally within your bounds of expectation. So, yeah. Alright, on to the cards. We like to start with the commons. And as we can see, very, very deep at the top here. Very balanced, very deep. We see 58% win rates for basically all these top commons, and it just kind of keeps going down. There's not really a steep drop off at all, which is usually true, but there's usually like one or two commons that are significantly above the rest. That's just not true in this format. Color-wise, white, red, colorless, Glimmerlight actually number 3. This is interesting, sort of interesting thing to think about. Glimmerlight just being one of the top commons at the moment. Its IWD is low. Its opening hand win rate is medium. I would say that it's just kind of like a solid role player. Is kind of what this indicates to me. You might say, oh, well, why is this so high? You know what I mean? Like, this card looks really medium. And I think it is in a lot of decks, but I think it just, it does kind of follow the principle of making 2 pieces of material. It does, like, you can play it any deck, and it's 2 mana. So, like, for those reasons, I think it being this high is fine, but I don't think you should draft it as if it's this high. The game in hand win rate, I think sometimes people get it conflated with like when you should take the card in packs, and I don't necessarily feel like that's always the way to approach things. But it does show you that a card has utility. This card clearly has utility. Currently at its Alsa's 646, that's pretty high. All of these high Alsa cards tend to do well. You see, like, cards with high Alsas necessarily will have higher game and hand win rates because they go later, so there's less value above replacement, if that makes any sense. Like, if these cards are slightly above replacement, your deck gets better than taking a card with a lower Alsa highly, right? So, like, if you get pick 7 Glimmerlight, that's better for your deck than getting like an A plus instead of an A, or like in like your pack 1. It's kind of what that means on average, because of the relative value of picking this card so low. But yeah, anyways, back onto sort of like color stuff. We see sort of like white, blue, and red at the top here, but a lot of stuff. We see that black clearly is the weakest in terms of commons, with Final Vengeance as the best black common at the moment, which makes sense to me, but is not. It wouldn't. I didn't expect it pre-format for sure, but it makes sense. Here's Expanse. I mean, black just kind of has like a bit of a rough go of it here. So, but yeah, that's where we're gonna start for now with the commons. I guess we can just start with the colors, with white, which I don't feel is the best color, but is fine. Trapped in the Screen, Unsettling Twins. Currently, Fear of Surveillance is kind of your best 2-drop. If we look at top users, does anything change here? Seized from Slumber, actually, this is an interesting one to see up here, up this high. I have found Seized from Slumber to be decent. I've played it. It's okay. You kind of got to know when you want it. Like, you want to be a slower white deck, but it seems that it is a card that has a lot of utility in those decks, and you do want interaction in this format. So I think you want interaction in all play booster formats because of the nature of high power levels. So like your commons, you generally want to be higher power level. Here's Jump Scare. Happy for Jump Scare. It's being up here. But yeah, generally pretty similar. Is there anything that looks like terrible? Kind of got this. I mean, let's go back to all users. To talk a little bit about me, because obviously ego and whatnot. See how things are doing. Yeah, like this card ended up being medium. Like a lot of these kind of like these medium cards you can play and they're okay. Yeah, I mean not a whole lot to talk about from white commons. This is kind of pretty as I expected in terms of where they are. Grand Entryway, Elegant Rotunda is a little worse than I would have expected. Now I didn't rate it. Like I rated it higher than it ended up being, and part of that is just the 1/1 doesn't. It's harder to use than it kind of like seems. I think at first glance. I think Fear of Surveillance actually I would take over this card in most spots, and I think that I should do that and respect that. That's kind of a big takeaway for me. For blue, we have Glimmerburst as your best blue common. And a bunch of other stuff. Notably, Vanish from Sight and Unable to Scream is solid removal spells. Unable to Scream specifically is just very efficient. I assume for top users it's actually going to be best. It might even be best. No, it's Vanish from Sight is best. That doesn't surprise me either. But these are all within such a close range that it's going to be similar. These are kind of your top 3 blue commons, no matter how you want to slice it. Interestingly, Twist Reality is way up there. This is something to keep in mind. Even for all users, Twist Reality being so high is actually indicative of the card being very strong. I should actually probably be taking this a bit higher then, because it is good. I mean, you know, counter spells like this. Turns out just having that ability to manifest dread is a thing that comes up sometimes, and just having a counter spell is nice. It's just a nice thing to be able to do. A lot of blues commons are actually good and functional and serve a role. Like, I actually think all of these are playable, except for, like, once you get down here, Claiming Prowler is real bad. Creep Beeper is kind of whatever. Enter the Enigma is truly unplayable. If you look at the top users again, I know I'm pinballing a lot here, but this is interesting that this is so high, although I guess they're all kind of very similarly grouped here, not played very often. Yeah, I think the blue commons serve a role. I would say that the counter spells are decent, and you should probably be playing them. Twist Reality is the better one. It's kind of an upset, given the recent performance of Quench versus things that aren't Quench in blue. So something to keep in mind there. On to black, I think the worst color. I don't think anyone's going to argue with you. Definitely playable, but we see 3 removal spells as your top 3 commons. I mean, Innocuous Red, I guess, is tied with the other 2 here. For top users, what are your top 3 commons? It's going to be Final Vengeance and then the Rat and then Murder. And then Winter's Intervention, fine, makes sense. The Rat I've actually found to be a pretty important piece to black decks because it works so well with your best common, which is Final Vengeance. That, I think, is kind of the key thing that you're doing in black, actually. In terms of cards you shouldn't be playing, these cards, I don't know. I mean, Cultist actually being this low is really interesting to me, because I don't think it's this bad, but maybe it actually is. I've had, Leech, be decent for me at times. Black's commons really aren't anything special, and I wouldn't advise playing black just for commons. I mean, really, after the Fnatic here, things kind of fall off even for the average player. This card is truly heinous. I don't really, quick rant about this card. I don't know why they printed it. This is I don't know. It's one of those ones where they've done this template many times and it's never good, and this one is also not good. So, I mean, the Leech being this low, whatever. I actually think the Leech has some relevance. I wouldn't put it this low. I've actually had decks where it's felt good for me. My experience with Balemark Leech is that it's actually not this bad. But the problem is that probably means it's actually this bad, and I'm just not playing. It means I'm not doing things right in the format, but I'm doing things to maximize Balemark Leech when I should be doing things to maximize other cards like Final Vengeance or Murder or something else, the Rat perhaps. I think you want to be maximizing the Rat and not maximizing Balemark Leech in black, essentially, which I think is something that I need to sort of keep in mind for myself. On to red, I think the best color, although we can just kind of see that at common it's maybe not the most special. Scorching Dragonfire and Percussionist is sort of your 1 and 2 Percussionist with a higher opening hand win rate. Percussionist is a more situational card. Part of the reason its win rate is so high is that its Elsa is so high as well. Again, so we talked about this with Glimmerlight a bit. If your Elsa is higher, it means that your win rate is going to be inflated a bit. So that is life. Turn Inside Out is here. Glassworks is here. MVS, Most Valuable Slayer. You just kind of see this is a pretty big drop off. It's a 3% drop off, 2.5%. Pretty significant between your common number 4 and common number 5. Kind of surprised to see this so low. For top users, I think it's a lot higher, actually. Let's check the top user stats here. Yeah, here it is. For top users, these commons are much flatter, which is true generally across the board, but for red specifically, we see this. Grab the Prize performing somewhat well for top users in a small sample, which makes sense. It's a deck that's cardless situational, but I think is good when you want it. Inferno's here, Playmate. I gotta stop taking. It's just interesting to think about sort of this stuff. Hand That Feeds surprises me. I think, again, this is another card that I think I'm overrating at the moment. We'll see where that goes. um, in the future. But yeah, the Soul Rager I have played more than I probably should, just because again I've played a lot of rooms, which shouldn't do probably, but against my better judgment, I have. Yeah, but I think red. Clockwork Percussionist, you do have to have ways to use this card, but I think we see from these numbers here that it's good in any red deck. I think you should probably be playing this in pretty much any red deck, but any red deck that can't use it effectively is going to be a bad red deck, right? The deck blue-red is the one red deck I don't think you would play this in, and that's why blue-red's win rate I think is actually lower. Like that's actually part of the reason is that this card doesn't really fit well in blue-red. Although you could try to do this like blue-red aggro-y shell. That's kind of like people are theorizing right now. So that maybe could work. Kind of an interesting thing to think about. So yeah. On to green, and green has a variety of solid commons, but nothing super exciting. It has decent 2-drops, which is really sort of a nice thing about green. In terms of top users, what do we have? Anything interesting for top users for green? No, honestly, it's pretty much the same. Frantic strength up here. Okay, be advised. Small sample here, but yeah, I mean, green's land cycler appears to be the best of the land cyclers. I did kind of predict that, but it's not really like a great prediction because it's still a very medium card. But yeah, it just kind of made sense to me anyway. Yeah, don't play Anthropede. It's bad. Don't play it. I thought it would have some utility, but yeah, no, it's just terrible. Similarly, this card. I think this is kind of like the death knell for 4-mana 4/4s. 4-mana 4/4s, like even in modern days, like even in like DMU, the 4-mana 4/4 with the reach, like that card was still like decent. And I think we're just at a point now where the 4-mana 4/4 baseline is truly just like not good. There are game states in which it kind of like matters, and there are game states where it doesn't. And when it doesn't matter, you really feel it. So that's kind of how we feel about the green here. But yeah, one of the biggest strengths of green is just lots of 2-mana spells, which is really nice for its top common. So green, you actually can have a solid curve, whereas the other colors not necessarily always so easy. No multicolor commons. There is Glimmerlight we talked about. The dual lands, Terramorphic Expanse up here. Goes in every deck, so it's not that surprising. I actually have played this card. I don't know if you should play this card, but I have. It's kind of a nightmare. Like, anytime I have 2-drops, like sometimes you gotta do it. It's the format's rough when I'm playing like 2-mana 2/2s that draw my opponent cards. That's how you know I'm in a rough spot where I'm like finding my head's in such a spiral that I'm out here playing like cards that I'm like, hey, I don't know about that one, boss. But we'll see. All right, on to the uncommons. Quickly look at the colorless ones. Not a whole lot to see here. Keys to the House is surprisingly bad, as it's basically not a land. You basically, unlike the one from the previous set that you could use as a land, this one you can't. I mean, you still can, but the format's kind of like, I don't know, sneaky to me. This format feels like faster than Bloomburrow. I don't know. Bloomburrow felt pretty slow to me. This one feels a little bit faster. I don't know. So like, I know we looked at the data, the game in hand. Sorry, the format speed thing. That doesn't necessarily indicate how fast a format feels. It really indicates how fast people concede, which is not necessarily the same thing. So, yeah. Is there anything else that's like interesting? Not really. Okay, so uncommon. We go to the multicolor uncommons. So currently, Midnight Mayhem is the most winning of the signposts. It has enough of a lead that it's going to stay there for the entire format, which is interesting. It's an upset. I mean, you kind of didn't get a lot of... I mean, there's a lot of good ones, right? Bookworm, Arabella, Gremlin Tamer, Brood Spinner. Like, these are all just, like, very powerful cards independently. Wickerfolk's good. Disturbing Mirth is good. Beatdown's good. After Beatdown is kind of when we get to, like, the tier 2. Even Beatdown, maybe this is kind of the tier 2 from Brood Spinner down. Of your signpost uncommons. The interesting thing about Midnight Mayhem is that its alpha is actually not as high as you might think. It's getting depicted at 465, which is only a little bit higher than Bookworm. It is higher than than Gremlin Tamer. Something to keep in mind. Skin number's 516. Soul Rager is 658. The bat's down here. Did anybody predict this? I don't know. Could have been anyone. Yeah. Shroud Stomper. I want to talk about a little bit about like some of this. Is there any architect things I want to talk about? This actually is kind of surprisingly bad. No, this is actually about where I had it. And put it in tier 1. This is about tier 2. It's tier 2-esque. Yeah. Yeah. In the middle of the data. Yeah, to talk about the ones at the bottom here, because the ones at the top are kind of more obviously interesting. We see that these are the archetypes that haven't really worked super well. Black, White, Reanimator, Blue, Red, and White, Green. Green, White obviously has the worst signposts. These cards just aren't reasonable. So Green White has a little bit of the problem that I like to talk about a lot. You know, I made the video on the 5-minute signpost problem. Baseball Bat has a similar problem. I actually want to maybe should make another one that's like a signposts that aren't like that you don't actually want multiples of is like a problem, and like this is kind of like that. It illustrates that problem. Should Storyteller is just a 3-mana 3/3. That's a problem. These creatures just all don't really have ETBs or are extremely expensive. I think that Shroud Stomper's game in hand win rate's going to be kind of weird because of the whatever. I actually should look at top users really quickly with the Shroud Stomper, see how that changes things. It actually doesn't change it very much. I don't think you're supposed to be playing Shroud Stomper. Just Black White Reanimate in general. I have tried it. I did the thing. It was fun. It wasn't good, but it was fun. So if you're looking to have fun, it is that. Midnight Mayhem and Mirth, actually. Mirth is actually really good for top users. And I've really liked, my personal favorite deck in this format has been Red-Black. I've loved Red-Black a lot. I'm going to be trying to draft it more because I really do like it. Bookworm is good too. Brood Spinner, we got Gremlin Tamer. Well, sort of the usual suspects here. Yeah. Yeah, no complaints. For the top users on the multicolor uncommon. So let's go back to, let's go in reverse order, starting with green. Under the Skin, really powerful card. I don't disagree with it being green's best uncommon. That's on every corner, also strong, but a little bit more of a build round. Similarly, the Beastie here. Fungus is kind of mid. I've actually looked at Fungus for like top users. It's actually not. It's not that mid. It's decent for top users, but for everybody else, it's kind of mid. This guy, be advised. He's okay. Great exposure, pressure. Find Survivor kind of being a medium card, not a surprise. Sort of like whatever. I'm kind of surprised to see a lot Knight this low, but my guess is that it's probably just way overdrafted. Like people just take this card like it's busted, and it's taken 3/3. That's why its win rate is poor. It's kind of a build. It's more of a build around than it looks like. You do need Terramorphic Expanses or other ways to get lands into your graveyard, and like you really specifically want the expanses because you want to do this on turn 2. I've never actually seen anybody do it, so it's a bit weird in that way. But green has some good uncommons, but nothing. And is there anything I really want to talk about here? Anything super interesting? This card, Greenhouse Rickety Gazebo being so bad is kind of weird to me because it looks appealing, like the 4-mana side of just drawing 2 cards. But it's just not good. Like it's just too bad of a rate for like milling 4 and drawing 2. So I think I'm just off it at this point. Red, the red uncommons. So we got Razorkin Hordecaller as your number 1, Gremlin as number 2, Bargain. We have Fear of Burning Alive, Studio, Fear of Being Hunted. Lots of strong cards here. The Vengeful Possession actually, kind of a card to call out as just playable in every red deck. It looks like to me. I've played it a decent amount. I've liked it. I think it is just a strong enough card. I don't really like Trial of Agony. I'll take a look again here. But yeah, it's not super exciting to me in terms of like what it's actually doing. the top user data versus regular user data on red uncommons is basically doesn't change anything. So red's actually pretty straightforward. It's the cards that look good are kind of good. Is there anything like super weird? No, Norins seems to be okay, but not the most exciting. So Violent Urge. This card's kind of a thing you can play. It's not bad, but it's not great. This game's play win rate's kind of high. We don't have quite enough data on the opening hands and stuff for top users for some of these cards for uncommons, which is okay. On to the black uncommons, and similar to the commons, there's just not a whole lot. Commune with Evil is kind of a big talking point. This card is stronger than it appears. It's stronger than I gave it credit for. That's really, like, gaining 3 life is kind of the key part of this card. Yes, it allows you to impulse a bit. Just the gaining 3 life really is kind of the thing that makes this playable. But yeah, it is a good card. And then just kind of a bunch of removal spells. This big guy. This thing seems okay. Egoist. Cynical Loner. There's this sort of recursion-y stuff. Specifically, Killer's Mask is like really bad. That's kind of interesting. The reason this is really bad is that there isn't a whole lot to do with artifacts in this set. I think in some sets this card would have been a little better. I still don't think it would have been great. Even just like Manifest Dread has been disappointing just generally. Because there's just a lot of things in this set that aren't creatures. I think Manifest Dread actually would play better in sets that are more like less enchantment-y focused, which is kind of I think why they did it in this set, to balance it out a bit. I think it would have been too strong in those sets. So I actually think they did a really good job balancing Manifest Dread. It's kind of an interesting way of doing it. Now, is it swingy? Is it a mechanic that's a little inherently swingy as a result of the way they chose to balance it? Yes. So that has problems. But yeah. So black for top users appears to be doing just fine at uncommon. These are sort of like average to like slightly above average cards for them. Egoist, I assume, is primarily being played in red-black. This guy's just kind of never good, sadly. I did play him in my bad Reanimator deck. Yeah. Blue. Unnerving Grasp. Card's really strong. Not a whole lot to say about Unnerving Grasp. Fear of Isolation. This one, I believed in, but I didn't believe in it this much. It's been performing great, and I thought it would be good. I just didn't know if it would be this good. A lot of blue removal in the uncommon space here. These are sort of 4 removal spells. This card looks like a creature, more of a removal spell. This is a removal spell, removal spell. This is a removal spell. We have this 2-drop. It actually kind of falls off pretty precipitously here from an opening hands, from a game in hand perspective. It is a good this guy's a good opener, but yeah. The Windbreaker, again, sort of similar to the Menace guy. It's just not that, like, a benefit. Like, if this is closer to a Windrake than not a Windrake in most spots. We're going to actually, I want to talk about Get Out in a bit. Let's look at the top user data for Get Out, because it's going to be up there. Yeah, Get Out is definitely a good card. You do need the mana base to support it, but it is strong. Similarly, this guy is, like, kind of decent. He looks bad, but I think he's actually, like, not terrible. Skullcrab, bad. Keybearer, not good. Fear-Filled Test. Fear-Filled Test is, like, a card that you will lose to, but isn't actually very good. It's just very easy to ignore in most spots. There's the spots where it's good, it just wins, but in most spots it just doesn't do anything. Similarly, the Crab is kind of on that list of cards that are like that. This is surprisingly impactful for a 5-drop. Again, not something you want to take super high because it does cost 5 mana. Its Elsa is 370, which is too high. If this were to come down to like a 4.2 or something, I think it would be a little more reasonable, and then I would play some more of it. But yeah. On to the white uncommons. Soldier by Ghosts is one of the best uncommons in the set, very powerful card. Similarly, Optimistic Scavenger, 2 very, very powerful white cards, sort of good reasons to get into white. A lot of white's power is it uncommon. The Split Skin Doll, good card draw engine, Ethereal Armor. Appears to just be a generically good card in this format. There are enough enchantments. It's actually interesting that it has a poor opening hand win rate Ethereal Armor, but it does sort of make sense. You want your 2-drops and then your Ethereal Armor, not the other way around. Shard Mage's Rescue. synergistic thing that works. Exercise is strong. Glimmer Seeker's not bad, for sure. Fear of Reduction kind of underperforming a bit for my expectations because I thought that card would be really very powerful. And then there's kind of a steep drop off towards the bottom here on Wanted Remake. Here it is, Tier 6, everybody. Here's your Tier 6 card. I put it in Tier 6, 48%. Justified. Justifying my Tier 6 rating. I have actually lost to this card twice, believe it or not. Which is a disaster. But, sometimes it's just when it's going bad, it's going to go real bad. For top users, I imagine this card is not played very much. Yes, patch play thing all the way down here. Interesting to see it this low. This is actually something to keep in mind, that this card is not that strong. Now, again, slightly deceptive because what you want to be doing with this card is manifesting it. So like the game in hand is kind of a weird, like games played is kind of more of indicative. I don't know how to do the manifest dread mechanic. It's kind of a weird from an eval standpoint. But yeah, like when you find yourself casting this card, it's not very good. So it being in your deck is fine, but like you casting it is kind of like a little different. So its win rate should probably be you should evaluate it closer to a 58 than a 56. Kind of a weird. And that's the one thing, again, that's the one thing with Manifest Dread 2, where it's like, I don't know if that's the thing that, like, actually, yeah, happens. For top users, there's actually a clearer delineation between the top three. It's Scavenger, Ghost, Split Skin Doll, and then it's a little bit of a drop to Rescue and Glimmer Seeker, which Glimmer Seeker is actually performing very well for top users, interestingly. So maybe it is just a generically good enough white card, and I should probably take it a little bit higher. This card is a strong thing. Fear of Reduction, closer to average for top users, maybe a little above. And that is it for the uncommons. I've kind of gone through a lot of the set here, looking at stuff that's interesting. Let us look at, in terms of where they stack up against each other, we see a lot of white in the uncommon space, and then some sort of green and blue. Not as much red here at uncommon as there was at common. So something to keep in mind as well is that red is more of a common-centric color. That's for top users as well. I should probably go to all users for this, but still sort of going to be the same general practice. All right, then we're going to just do a little bit of looking at rares, specifically the rares, and then the mythics. This card is obviously busted. We knew that. This card similarly. There's a lot of busted rares in this set. I certainly have felt personally that I've been getting owned by a lot of rares in the set. Just that's life, right? But for me specifically, felt certainly closer to a Princey format than a Paupery format. For me personally. We will see how that continues as the format goes on, but yeah, it certainly hasn't been my favorite. Is there anything I really want to talk about? Not a ton I really want to talk about here. Dissection tools being really strong, maybe something to think about, but not. I mean, like I guess we could look at the Elsas and see if there's anything misleading here. Balustrade Worm actually underperforming a bit. I actually have felt this in my own decks. I've drafted this twice, and it was very good for me, but like I've lost a lot of games where I was like, I'm going to win. I have a Balustrade Worm, but it doesn't just auto-win. See, it has 59% win rate. It's not an auto-win. Similarly, Twitching Doll. Not just an auto-win. You do just lose games to getting out aggroed, although this one in the opener is very nice. This one's just always good, because of course it is. Vitality, picking really high, but not performing that well. Not super surprising. Similarly, this one. Chainsaw's great. What about the Mythics? Anything interesting in Mythic? There's not a ton of interesting things in Mythics. There's only, like, the Overlords are very good. This card is very good. Tyvar, we got this guy, we got this guy. Any top user data on the Mythics? There's not much, really. This card, Mistmoors is very good. I've drafted Mistmoors like 3 times, and I have trophied with none of those decks because I haven't, I don't know. I never see, I put this card in my deck, and then I don't ever see it. So it's elusive. Even when you find it in the draft, you don't always find it in your games, I can say from my personal experience. But it is definitely, I think, it's one of the more powerful cards in the set. I don't. It's probably the best. Yeah, this or Velgavoth's Onslaught is the best card in the set. It's kind of a competition between them, but this one is very good. Um, and I think that's it. I think that's it for the 17 Lands data review. Not a whole lot to talk about. I mean, I guess to wrap things up, how I'm feeling. Red feels like the best color to me. Black feels like the worst, but there's some. So we're gonna see some balanced stuff play out over the next couple of weeks, and I hope you enjoyed the review and stick around. There's gonna be more stuff. I haven't decided what I'm gonna do for more Duskmourn content yet, but I'll keep you posted. See you.